Hello people, we're going to look at a few 5 sentence parajumbles in this particular video. It's going to be slightly more difficult. I thought we'll do a few 5 sentence parajumbles for the simple reason that 4 sentence parajumbles are a lot easier if you're comfortable with 5 sentence parajumbles. It's a lot difficult to get them right, obviously, right? More permutations and combinations. Also, there was a time when things changed around 2018 cat, for the simple reason that parajumbles became 4 sentence ones and became highly mark scoring opportunities, but people did not quite come out of the trauma caused by the 5 sentence parajumbles, and a lot of practice they still use the same old questions. So I'll discuss a few of them. You know the drill. You can pause the video here and solve it for yourself, all 3 questions put together. The usual 5 sentence parajumble should not take you more than 2.5 minutes. Again, same logic. Attempt should always be to solve it in 2 minutes. 4 sentence parajumbles 1.5 to 2 minutes. 5 sentence, if you are slightly slower, maybe you would want to take 2.5 minutes. But if you're anyone who takes 2.5 minutes to solve a 5 sentence parajumble, if at all the 5 sentence parajumble turns up in the exam, if you're someone who needs that 2.5 3 minutes to get it right, it's a good idea to just let go of these questions. Okay, no point trying out the 5 sentence parajumbles unless you're a really good reader looking for a 95 to 95 plus percentile, because no point trying to solve them, because the probability of you getting it right is a little lower than in case of 4 sentence parajumbles, and you will end up wasting 2.5 minutes. Okay, so you can do that anyway. You can try it out. We'll discuss a few more things, not just about getting the right answer. As far as parajumbles are concerned, the logic still remains the same, right? So it might help you for 4 sentence parajumbles as well. Anyway, quickly look at the first question. It is not natural for us to be sedentary. Travel is in our genes. This is what you call an independent sentence, which is absolutely useless as far as your order is concerned. So no point wasting time. This nomadic life was no accident. It was useful. You have your big clue here, isn't it? This nomadic life is your big clue here. Some sentence, you're looking for some sentence which talks about a nomadic life. You put it right in front of 2, so you just write down 2 here. For most of the time our species has existed, we have lived as nomadic hunter-gatherers, moving about in small bands of 150 people or fewer, writes Christopher Ryan in Civilized to Death. So you straight away got your nomadic life, right? And if you just glean over the other 2 sentences, you will notice that you don't see the word nomadic anywhere. So you know that 3-2 is your block. Okay, that you get your first block. You don't have to read the whole paragraph to get your blocks, isn't it? Sometimes you just get them straight away, and you should be on the lookout. Robert Louis Stevenson puts it more succinctly: the great affair is to move. Okay, the moment you see more succinctly, you know that you've seen Christopher Ryan's quotes and you've seen Robert Louis Stevenson's quote, and this guy is putting it more succinctly. Okay, little more in a shorter way, or more subtly, or however you want to read it. So Robert Louis Stevenson's quote has to come after Christopher Ryan's quote. Okay, so you know that 4 definitely comes after somewhere after 3-2. Now, the big question that you should be asking is, this guy Ryan has another piece of sentence. Obviously, you know that 5 has to come after 3 because full name comes before half name. Okay, I hope you already understand. It's a major, powerful clue, right? So I know that even 5 comes to the right of 3-2 because 3-2 is a mandatory block. It is not natural for us to be sedentary. Travel is in our genes, is an independence. But now when you've read all 5 sentences, you will know that, okay, 1 has to come right at the beginning. It's the biggest idea. It's more upstream. Why? How do we know that? Because 3 says, for most of the time our species has existed, we've lived as nomadic hunter-gatherers, moving about in small bands of 150 people or fewer, is an elaboration or an example of what 1 says. It's not natural for us to be sedentary. Travel is in our genes. You'll obviously ask the question, why or how? Therefore, 3 comes as an explanation. Now you can ask the repeat question, the reverse question as well. Can I not put 3 first, and then as a conclusion, can I say it is not natural for us to be sedentary? Is there any value to that sentence? If I'm already giving you 3, and we know that nomadic hunter-gatherers used to move around, what's the point of saying after that it's not natural for us to be sedentary? Travelers in our genes, isn't it? You understand the structure? So that's why we say that the vague idea or the big idea comes first, because the big idea, the suspense is gone. Once in 3, you know that our ancestors used to do it anyway. So then no point coming and stating the obvious thing, it's not natural for us to be sedentary. But if you put 1 in the beginning, the elaboration is 3, so 1-3 makes a better block. So 1-3-2 is your block, right? The big question is, should 4 come first or 5 come first, isn't it? So now you know that it's not such a big, once you get this entire block, now you have to say, okay, can I put Robert Louis Stevenson puts it more succinctly immediately after 3? Would it make sense? Yes. So 1, 3, 2, 4, let's say fifth sentence was not even there in this parajumble question. It becomes a very easy question. 1, 3, 2, 4 will become my order and it's correct. 4 can come after 2. 5 can also come after 2. Okay, moving to a neighboring land is always an option to avoid brewing conflict just for a change social scenery, says Ryan. The problem is, how do I know that 5 comes before 4? Because of the content of 5. What does 5 talk about? Moving to a neighboring land is always an option to avoid brewing conflict or just for a change in social scenery, isn't it? Which kind of explains this part. It was not just an accident, it was useful. How? Because you want to avoid conflict, therefore 5 comes here. But because the great affair is to move, while it is fine, okay, 4 can follow 2, not a problem at all. But if 5 is there, you can't put 5 after 4. Once you moved on from how it is beneficial, it was useful, and then moved on and said the great affair is to move, then you won't come back and say, hey, we want to avoid conflict and change in social scenery and whatnot. So 5 won't make sense after 4, isn't it? So the answer to this particular question would be 1, 3, 2. And then you have 5, and then finally you have 4. Okay, hope you got that right. Let's look at the next question. We all thought Black Widow might be resurrected via cosmic chicanery, some deceit, some kind of magic, okay, chicanery after her entanglement with the Soul Stone Avengers Infinity War. But turns out there may be other ways for her to return. The two big clues for you are this: there may be other ways means that this paragraph is not an odd one out question, right? So we're going to use all of these sentences, which means this paragraph has to talk about other ways for her return. How awesome is that topic, isn't it? But it turns out, okay, what does turns out mean? Turns out means it looks like, it seems, it appears, isn't it? That means we have proof. So keep it aside for now. So 1 can be an amazing first sentence, but 1 can also be an amazing last sentence, which is why you never go with, hey, this is a generic sentence, so let me put it at the top. Okay, I hate that logic which some of the students use, which is sounds like an introduction sentence, so I'll put it at the top. It doesn't work like that. Okay, if it's an independent sentence, just push it aside. We'll come back to it later. Your job is not to find the starting sentence of a paragraph ever in a parajumble question. Your job is to find the block wherever that block exists. Once you have the block, then you decide, should I put it before the block, after the block, and whatnot, right? Yet, which is your powerful contrast marker. So we have our big clue here, yet. Okay, what is yet? Let's say yet there are clues as to how the spy cum superhero might live. Again, the spy cum superhero, who's that? There's a big question mark. So we know that this sentence has to come after Black Widow's introduction somewhere, isn't it? Because that's the only person being spoken about here. Everything about the early trailer screams care and attention to the minutiae of Black Widow's world. Okay, the early trailer of what? This sentence is talking as if you already know about the name of the movie, isn't it? So we are looking for something that explains the early trailer is what? Everything about the early trailer screams care and attention to the minutiae of Black Widow's world away from the Avengers, which makes it hard to imagine Romanoff simply being put back in her Civil War era box when the movie is done. Okay. So the big question is, which early trailer are we talking about, right? Next, for a start, this for a start is a powerful clue. For a start is like for an example, but for a start is used when you have a list. This is the first of the list. For a start, all graduates of the Red Room here seem to be codenamed Black Widow. So we have that big secret let out now. So Black Widow is not just one person. Many people who are called Black Widow. It's like Bonds, isn't it? Which makes one wonder if Belova, some other character, might one day take over the mantle of Black Widow in the main timeline. So this is an example of how it could be done. So we know, right, the other ways for her to return. There are clues, it says, for a start. So there are clues. For a start, all graduates of the Red Room here seem to be codenamed Black Widow. It's also is your other connector, isn't it? Also other, another, to, even, these words tell you that, is following some similar idea in the previous sentence. It's also worth bearing in mind that Romanoff herself has previously been cloned in print. Okay, so cloned in print is a big clue here, which means there can be other Black Widows is what the sentence is talking about. But this sentence can only follow another sentence which is talking about other Black Widows, isn't it? So we know that 4, 5 is a block, isn't it? How do we know that? Because of the also. The also is a very powerful word. So it's also worth bearing in mind that Romanoff herself has previously been cloned in print. So for a start, all graduates are called Black Widow, which makes us wonder if this other person will become the next Black Widow or whatever, take over the mantle. It's also worth bearing in mind that Romanoff herself has been previously codenamed. So there's Romanoff and there are other characters like Belova who can become Black Widows. Done. Yet there are clues as to how the spy cum superhero might live again. How might live again? 4 is an example and 5 is an example, right? So we know that these two sentences can't come before the yet. So the yet has to be the one that talks about how the spy cum superhero might live again, because 4 and 5 are examples of how you get the Black Widow again. So what justifies the yet is your next question, right? Yet there are clues. We need something that's contrasting to that. What sentence is contrasting that? Look at 1 and 3. Everything about the early trailer screams care and attention to the minutiae of Black Widow's world away from the Avengers, which makes it hard to imagine Romanoff simply being put back in her Civil War era box. It's suspense, isn't it? Everything screams care and attention, which makes it hard to imagine Romanoff simply being put in her Civil War era box. So means something else is there. We all thought Black Widow might be resurrected via cosmic chicanery after entanglement of the Soul Stone Avengers, but it turns out there may be other ways. If there are other ways, now if you notice, 1 can't come to the immediate left of 2 because 1 and 2 kind of agree, isn't it? So 1 is also saying it turns out there may be other ways for her to return. So 1 can come right at the left, 1 can come right here, isn't it? We don't want to worry about it for now. What we want to worry about is that there is a 2, 4, 5 block here. That's all we want to worry about for now, isn't it? So 1 can come right at the beginning, 1 can come right at the end. We don't want to worry about, but where is 3 coming? Something needs to justify this too, isn't it? So we put 3 here. Now the big $1 million question, isn't it? So 3 saying, which makes it hard to imagine Romanoff simply being put back in her Civil War era box when the movie is done. 1 is very similar to 2. So 1 can't come immediately to the left of 2. Remember, that's why we had to put 3 to the left of 2, because obviously 2, 4, 5 is 1 block. So a good question to ask would be, is 3 a really good sentence in front of 2? Not necessarily. But again, that's why we always find the mandatory blocks first. You don't try to form the story in your head, because you want to form the story in your head. 3, 2 won't give you the story, won't give out the story, and there's no way you can guess it. But instead, 4 and 5 is a good connection. For a start, also worth bearing. For a start has to follow, there are clues. And yet is there. So the previous sentence has to be something that contrasts. So it has to be either 1 or 3. 1 can't be, because other ways for written kind of agrees with 2. So you have no choice but to put 3 there. Done. So 3, 2, 4, 5 is 1 block. Now 1 should come to the left of 3. 1 should come right at the end, isn't it? So which is the big question to ask? Now we all thought Black Widow might be resurrected via cosmic chicanery after her entanglement to Soul Stone Avengers Infinity War, but turns out there may be other ways for her to return. Turns out, okay. Turns out is like saying, okay, it seems like we have other ways, which means we should have already discussed the other ways, right? Which justifies why 1 can be in the end. But if I want to put 1 to the left, we have no choice but to follow 1 with 3. What is 3 saying? Hard to imagine Romanoff simply being put in her Civil War era box. Okay, so 3 is expressing vagueness. 3 is expressing a sense of hard to imagine her in this, which means there must be something else. That's what 3 is trying to convey, right? 1 is definitive and says it turns out there may be other ways. So if 1 is saying it turns out there may be other ways, I can't put 3 after and say hard to imagine this. We don't need to imagine this, isn't it? We've all been told in the previous sentence that we know that there are other ways, which means 1 can't come to the left of 3. Therefore, 1 comes to the end, isn't it? So it's a very difficult set of sentences. I have to go through it. If you got the answer wrong, please make sure you sit through and think as to why you put them together. It's absolutely unpardonable if you practiced enough and, with cat not too far away, it's absolutely unpardonable if you do not get 2, 4, 5. Okay, you're supposed to be getting 2, 4, 5. If it were a 4-sentence parajumble, 2, 4, 5, 1 is awesome, because 1 will definitely not come in front of 2. If 3, 2, 4, 5 will be the other possible pair if I give you sentence 3. But 2, 4, 5 is mandatory. You should have gotten it. Okay. If you put 1, 3, 2, 4, 5, the only mistake you made is what made you pick 1 in front of 3? That's the big question you have to ask. Obviously, you won't be able to justify it. You would have just force fit it, because hey, in what happens in parajumble, sometimes you just get tired and you're like, it sounds good, so I'll put it. Don't get tired in a parajumble. I mean, make sure you do it fast enough. Obviously, you can't take 2.5, 3 minutes, but don't just give up in the end and say, hey, it looks good, so I'll put it here. Always ask, can I look for a clue that confirms it to me? Okay, that's why I keep talking about timer and I keep talking about rules in parajumbles. Never form the story. Okay, anyways, the answer will be 3, 2, 4, 5, 1. Let's look at another question. Among the numerous gratifications derived from the cultivation of flowers, that of rearing them for the sake of their perfume stands preeminent, is an independent sentence. What I want you to observe is numerous gratifications means there are many uses. This is a big idea. Okay. there are many reasons why, you know, flowers are cultivated. Then there's a smaller idea, sake of the perfume. So perfume is getting introduced in one. The reason I'm discussing that is this talks about perfumes. This talks about perfumes. Okay. This we don't know origin of this, it says, and then we are talking about incense here. So all of them are about perfume. So straight away know that one is the first sentence, because if a series of sentences or even 2 sentences or 3 sentences are talking about the same concept, the sentence in which it gets introduced has to come first, period. Okay, you can't talk about perfumes and come back and introduce perfumes. You don't do that. The whole idea of introduction is that you put it at the beginning. So first part saying there are a lot of uses of flowers, cultivation of flowers, so many gratifications. One of them is perfumes. Okay, so one comes straight away. Done. Anyway, among the nations of antiquity, an offering of perfumes was regarded as a token of the most profound respect and homage. Independent sentence, just keep it aside. It is proved from the oldest records that perfumes have been in use from the earliest periods. Again, independent sentence can't help us much. The origin of this, like that of many other arts, is lost in the depth. So you don't need this. Okay, this is useless information. So read it for the first time, obviously. Second time, don't need to read it. Origin of this is lost in the depth of its antiquity, though it had its rise, no doubt, in religious observances. So you know that the use of perfume in religious observances is coming here. Okay, which means most profound respect and homage, isn't it? Has to come later. Incense or frankincense, which exudes by incision and dries as a gum from arbor thurifera, was formerly burnt in the temples of origins, is also an example of this. So you know that 5 comes after 4. Not very difficult to figure that out, because it's 4 that's talking about religious observances. Done. And then you have the big question, the origin of this, it says, right? Origin of what? Origin of this is lost in the depth of its antiquity, though it had its rise, no doubt, in religious observances, isn't it? So 1 is coming here. I need something that explains my this. It has to be, so 4 and 5 is your block, by the way, isn't it? Because religious observances come here. So this can be 1, nothing that points to this. That of rearing them for the sake of their perfume stands preeminent. It's giving me the use. So nothing can point to 1 and say this, the origin of this, because that of rearing them for the sake of their perfumes stands preeminent. That is the major gratification, cannot be pointed out using this. So we know that it can't be 1. So it has to be either 2 or it has to be 3, isn't it? That points to this. Now look at 2 and 3. Among the nations of antiquity, an offering of perfumes was regarded as a token of the most profound respect and homage. The origin of this is lost in the depth of, again, this is useless information, is lost in the depth of antiquity. Once you read it, you understand, right? It's lost, though it had its rise in religious observances. So if you notice, it was regarded as a token of the most profound respect and homage. Is the author telling us that, you know, why perfumes were important? Why do I need to talk about the origin? We won't, isn't it? But there is a clue in 3 which talks about origin. It is proved from the oldest records that perfumes have been in the use from earliest periods. The origin of this, like many other arts, is lost in the depth of its antiquity, which is why they have been used from the earliest periods. There are the oldest records, but the origin is lost, though no doubt it was religious observance. That much I know. Okay, so you know that 3 comes in front of 4. Okay, so we have 1, 3, 4 and 5. Right, now we have the big question, where exactly am I going to put 2? Think of it this way, where exactly am I going to put 2? Now generally what will end up doing is, we just want to force fit 2 here or there, because you're very happy with 4 and 5. You're very happy with 3, 4, 5 blocks. So you just want to put, say, hey, it could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, for example. Okay, let's look at that. Among the numerous gratifications derived from the cultivation of flowers, that of rearing them for the sake of their perfume stands preeminent. Among the nations of antiquity, an offering of perfumes is regarded as a token of the most profound respect and homage. 2 follows 1. It's not an issue. But if 2 follows 1, 3 has to follow 2. 3 says it is proved from the oldest records that perfumes have been in use from the earliest periods. After saying perfumes were regarded as a token of the most profound respect, we will talk about earliest records and use of perfumes from the earliest periods, because 3 is not giving us anything about what kind of use. 3 is only talking about perfume being used, isn't it? So you know that 3 is the bigger idea, or upstream. So 2 can't come to the left of 3, right? That leaves us with 2 here, or 2 in between these two, isn't it? Or 2 in the end, isn't it? 3 more options possible. Now, can I put 2 before 4? Among the nations of antiquity, an offering of perfumes was regarded as a token of the most profound respect and homage. But like we discussed, the origin of this will not make sense then, right? This has to point to this third sentence, isn't it? The origin of this, like many other arts, is lost. The origin of, the usage of perfumes from the earliest periods. So you know that 2 can't come before 4. So that leaves us with splitting the 4 and 5 or putting it in the end. Now, because we thought that 4 and 5 is a pair, we'll obviously want to try and put 4 split 2 in the end. That's our natural inclination. But obviously, if you form the order, you'll read it, right? What is happening with 5 and 2? Just observe. Incense or frankincense, which exudes by incision and dries as a gum, was formerly burned in the temples of all religions in honor of all the divinities that were there adored, isn't it? So religious observance and this religions makes sense to us. That's why we want to keep 4 and 5 together. We don't want to slip it. But then you go from 5 to 2. Among the nation of antiquity, an offering of perfumes was regarded as a token of the most profound respect and homage. Does it make sense in the end? No. Because I'm already talking about religious observances. I'm already talking about it being burnt in the temples of all religions in honor of the divinities. Once I'm already talking about honor of the divinities, among the nations of antiquity, it was regarded as a token of the most profound respect and homage. Doesn't make sense anymore because it's already been mentioned, isn't it? So you have no choice but to split 4 and 5 and put 2 in between. If you put it in between, religious observances, offering of perfumes regarded as a token of the most profound respect, and it was to the it was burned in all the temples of all religions, is an example of 2. But if you notice, it's not one of those usual ways where I got my blocks and I just got the whole order of the paragraph. This is more elimination, right? Because we have a problematic sentence. Now you know why 5-sentence parajumbles are difficult, because we'll almost always have that problematic sentence which will not fit anywhere, but you have to go upstream, downstream, isn't it? I know one's definitely coming to the left. I know 3 is not even talking about the usage. So perfumes being used for homage and respect won't come before 3. So 1 and 3 is safe, right? 4 is religious observances. 5 is example of religious observances. So I may want to put 2 in the end, but no point putting 2 after 5. Can't put 2 in front of 4 because 4 has a this. That's why pronouns are useful, isn't it? So 1, 3, 4 to 5 will be the only possible order. This is the kind of question that eat up a lot of time too, so you have to be careful in the exam. A good way of not falling for a question like this. Let's say this question you saw in your exam, okay, hopefully you would not, but look at the left side, okay, don't see anything. It here is not useful because it's not pointing to something outside. It is proved from the oldest records that, isn't it? So by the time you come here, it's not a clue. The only clue here is this, and this is always a dangerous clue. It's not going to point to something. This is almost always pointing to something very vague, isn't it? Because this, anything that points to ideas is obviously vague. This, for example, or that, for example, not like he or she or they or, here, for example, which are very useful and directly point to one particular thing, but this and that don't. So you don't have proper nouns, you don't have dates, you don't have extra connector words, you don't have left side contrast markers. This is not a question you should be touching unless you're looking for anything other than 99 percentile. Okay, hope that makes sense to you. Until next time, peace out.